Hey guys, this is Mike from Deepwood Force of Will here, coming back again with another video for you guys. This time around it's a deck profile, and we're going over a Conqueror format deck profile. We've been doing a lot of testing on things with the new changes, with Sigurd getting banned and Lumia getting unbanned in this most recent one, plus everybody experimenting with Epic of the Dragon Lord. There's plenty to go with, and today we're bringing you a Ragnarok list from the one and only Minh Ha. For those of you who don't know, Min has been a singleton deck player for as long as I's been around. Famously, recently he had FTK'd somebody on stream using a Magna deck, and while we were playing in one of our OLS matches, I issued a challenge to him, because he and I go back and forth on new crazy ideas, and I said, Min, I want you to make this Tron combo happen that puts the 3 Tron stones from Ghost in the Shell out on turn 1. And he said, bet. So here we are. Ragnarok Tron. Now we have 2 limiting factors to this deck. One is the fact that Ragnarok lets you have a single copy of any card in your deck, and 2, all of your stones don't produce of any attribute. They just produce 1, but once you have them out, they produce 2 and 3 respectively. But thankfully Ragnarok has a couple of cool things going. His X ability is paid with Void attribute will, so that's totally fine. He can produce 2 wills in any combination of attributes, which is really helpful for getting any kind of colored spells just kind of thrown into things. And you can, and with the kind of expanded card pool, you have way more options for Ragnarok to work with. So that draw 3 effect is really good, and then everything else will really come in handy. So this deck was based around a specific card in combination with Ragnarok that we'll go over in a second. But for right now, let's just go through the list. Obviously our ruler is Ragnarok, who, for X, based on how many times it's been played this game, you produce 2 will, you copy a chance spell, draw 3 cards, remove all additions, regalia, and cards in your opponent's graveyard from the game, destroy all J rulers, or remove all resonators your opponent controls from the game. Basic utility ruler, but very, very powerful effects. The ones that we're most going to be focusing on in this deck are those first 2, actually, and you'll see how those kind of go into play. From there on, we have a pretty standard regalia package: Artemis the God's Bow, Gleipnir the Red Binding of Fate, Horn of Sacred Beasts, and Death Scythe the Life Reaper. 0 will cost cards are just very, very strong. Ragnarok drawing 3 cards means that you can safely play these without the fear of overdrawing at the end of your turn and having to discard down. So definitely nice to have these in, and each of them have their own specific, generally good effects. Moving on, we've got Armaki and Togusa. Again, a lot of this deck is going to be Void attribute due to the fact that your stones are all producing Void. So having stuff like Armaki and Togusa, which is just a 2-cost, force your opponent to remove something and then draw 2. We have Boto and Kukusanagi Motoko, which can give you, give a resonator you control swiftness by paying 1, and in the late game can turn into a swiftness card that destroys a resonator when it enters. So really nice stuff once you're able to produce a ton of will with the Tron lands. We have Bato and Stan. Again, pretty standard stuff. Dive for 5, just make your opponent discard 2. If you have a lot of will floating around, it's very easy to do that. And when they enter, destroy a resonator. So a lot of these cards are just generally strong utility cards that are overcosted. But when you're playing the Tron lands, you're going to find yourself with a lot of open will. And with Bato Motoko's Buddy, just a way to search out Kusanagi Motoko. Having a card that's basically a second copy of another card in your deck is really, really good in a singleton deck. Next up is Bato, who just gives something a huge stat buff, so you can get surprise lethals out of nowhere. Borma's good for board clears, not really much else. Ishikawa helps you to copy your dive effects once you're into the late game and you have something as strong as, say, like Bato's effect, where you just give something plus 1500, plus 1500 twice. It's very, very strong. Ishikawa, the experienced crew, having addition destruction is fine. Ragnarok kind of does it for better, but he's just kind of a backup plan. And you can just play him later on in the game. Got one of the win cons for the deck, Kusanagi Motoko boarding Tachikoma. Swiftness and resting all residue opponent controls is really good when you have a lot of mana to sink into it. Same with Kusanagi Motoko and Bodysuit, where it's just a removal spell that also turns into an unblockable resonator, which is really nice. Formal wear, Kusanagi Motoko is pretty solid. It just kind of turbos out things from your deck. Again, being able to just kind of toss something into the removed area from your deck when you don't really have a lot of ways to search things out is really good. So Motoko helps get you there. The Major, obviously just one of the best cards from Ghost in the Shell, having the ability to look at your opponent's hand and then have a way to just kind of prohibition one of their cards. It's very, very strong. And then we have the original 7-cost Motoko, Miss Keyword Soup herself, just one of the deck's other win conditions. One of the key players for this deck, actually, Machina, King of Accursed Machines, back from Echoes of the New World. By paying 300 life, you can produce any color, and you can play this ability only once per turn, but it can be done during either player's turn, which is really significant. And then cards you control named Maribella can't be destroyed. It's not in this deck. Next up, one of the surprise factors for the deck is this Ragnarok on top of the other Ragnarok, with the fact that the Ragnarok ruler gives you an extra 2 will to use at your disposal. You can just play this Ragnarok out on turn 4 with the right setup, and because you're playing a singleton deck, you can basically just draw your deck, discard any number of cards, and then Hoard of the Sacred Beast them back into your deck. A very powerful card, but very high risk, high reward. He did pull it off once against me in the OLS, which is really cool, so definitely look into this card a little more. It's very much a not necessary for the deck, but if you're willing to take the risk, it's a very fun card. Obviously we have the 1 Windservant of Ragnarok, because just being able to have an enter ability to produce 3 will off of spending only 1 will is really, really strong, especially when you play this thing off of Machina, King of Accursed Machines. You're basically just netting free mana at that point, which is really sick. Next up, Saito the Sniper. Just a 3 mana 6/6, which is terrible, but the dive effect lets you destroy something at instant speed. So, not terrible. Sanji Gucci is just 1 thick B. It's got 1600 attack, 1000 defense, and has barrier. Literally the only reason you play this card is just because it's big and it's hard to remove, and you just play it when you have all Tron lands up. No other reason. SP is really interesting. It's a 1 will 200/200 that when it says you banish it, and then target resonator gains barrier. So just a nice little quick kind of protection tool. It's just kind of a way to fill out space in the void attribute. Stan, a former army infantry, excuse me, is basically just a dive for a rapid growth that turns into 600/500 for 2, which is not terrible, but you know, overcosted for essentially what it's for the pieces that kind of make it up because of the dive mechanic. Then we have Tachikoma A, B, and C. A is the one that gives something plus 600/600 when it enters. B returns something to the hand, and C deals 600 damage to a resonator. All these being 3-cost machines with quick cast is really, really significant, especially when one of the Tron stones basically just taps itself for 3, so you can immediately cast one of these out. Very strong cards. Togusa, the Competent Investigator, is just really, really nice card selection in the singleton deck. You look at the top 3, and you just kind of order your deck however you want it to be. And combining that with Ragnarok's Draw 3 ability is actually very significant, so you can kind of find whatever you need. Next up is Clockwork Soldiers. Just a 1 will 300/300 that can possibly get bigger if you need it to. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but target attack is kind of nice in the early game from time to time. Next we have Spirit of the Soil and Loamy Soil. This is a way to ramp yourself into those Tron lands whenever you get the chance to, and we'll see another card that's similar to this in a second. Next we also have Tsuya, Cursed Spawn of the Star. Just a very, very strong 1-drop that turns itself later on into the game into a remnant card that removes something from your opponent's hand. Just a very, very good card when you're playing a bunch of singletons. It's probably one of the best one-off cards we've ever seen in this game's history. It's hard to fit it into a lot of decks, but Ragnarok has a good home for it. Next up we have Endless Purse. Ben was playing this in combination with Ragnarok in order to draw out his entire deck and then make sure that he has no need to discard his hand at the end of the turn, which was just absolutely disgusting because he was sitting there with a 28-card hand. It's crazy. Next up, Beyond the Threshold of Time. Similar story to the Loamy Soil spell, where you just draw a card, put the top card of your Magic Stone deck into the field. You can play this out on turn 1 with Ragnarok, which is really nice. but it's not essentially part of the combo. It's just a very good alternative card to have. If you see this turn 1 and you know that you're going to put yourself ahead of your opponent, you might as well. Next up is Burning Rapid Dash, which is one of the coolest cards in combination with Ragnarok. Basically what you do on turn 1 is you produce 2 Fire Will, cast this, and then use Ragnarok's ability for 1 to copy it. So you have turn 1, 1800 swiftness worth of stats, as well as a bunch of damage that'll appear when these things leave the field. So the dash is very, very good with Ragnarok. Next up, Optical Camouflage, very easy to use resonator removal. 1 void is really nice, and it just returns it to the owner's hand. Blessing of Yggdrasil, this is actually the key combo piece for the Tron lands, and we'll go over this in a second after we go through the rest of the deck. 1 Isle of Magic for will fixing and being able to just draw a card. Similar story for Origin of the 7 lands, and you'll see in the side deck the 7 Kings are there. It's an alternate win condition in the event that you get there, but it's not necessarily going to happen all the time unless you have Statue of the Sacred Temple. And you just statue the tower up next. When it's field, you draw a card, and again, similar to Isle of Magic, it just helps you fix up your mana while you're getting to your plays. And then Statue in the Sacred Temple just makes it so that your Tron lands all produce any color while you're waiting for them to be online. And also, later in the game, can turn itself into an angel, but eh. And then, of course, the land. The stone base is 4 Prime Ministers, 3 Home Ministry, 3 Section 9. Obviously you want this one to be the maximum because it's the one that produces 3. Pretty basic. And then sideboard, the 7 Kings Rulers. Obviously we have these for Origin of the 7 lands. Then 1 White Leaf for some quick life gain for basically no will. Ishikawa and Motoko to destroy something. Arl to just kind of have a thing that recurs itself. Evil Elemental Uprising. Obviously grave removal. Battle comes to an end, and then just one of the best cards to play with Ragnarok turn 1. Name a card that you know is going to give you trouble in game 2, and you just go from there. And of course, free damage is good. Last Secret Sword is a great card. Secret Duel in the Moonlight helps you draw into your deck a little bit more and can be used as a pseudo final battle. And then don't cheat because it can occasionally cost 0. We don't have to worry much about Divinity Rulers in Conqueror, but having Don't Cheat around is really nice, just in case you're playing a deck that wants to cast a chance spell from somewhere else. So what's this combo here? So similar story to how Burning Rapid Dash can be copied on turn 1, so too can Blessing of Yggdrasil. So what you'll do is you'll use Ragnarok to produce green and something else, use that to cast Blessing of Yggdrasil after you've hit, say, one of these 3. Say you've hit Home Ministry first. You cast Blessing of Yggdrasil, and then you copy it. The first one will get you Section 9, and the third one will get you... the second one will get you Prime Minister's Office. And from there you have all 3 of your Tron lands up, go to your next turn, tap, you get the 4th one, and then you have roughly between 9 to 10 will to use for that turn. And for that, you just, make your opponent lose. So what's the chance of this going off? Not very high, because it's a 1 in 40 chance to see it. But if you mulligan hard enough and pray to Minh Ha, the one true god of RNG, and draw RNG, you too can get Tron on turn 1. But other than that, that's pretty much it for the deck. It's annoying to go through singleton decks, and it's even more annoying to build them, but Min has made an art of it, and I'm glad he's up to my challenge, because this deck was a lot of fun to face off against, and from what he was saying, very, very fun to pilot. So give it a try, let us know what you think of it, and as always, this has been Mike from Deepwood Force of Will, signing off.